Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another Talmix live broadcast. My name's Katie Roberts. You've probably seen me before. And as you know, these broadcasts happen monthly, and we're always thankful for people who join and sign in to watch. We do have a strong following. So if it's the first time that you're joining us today, huge welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. We love to have people back. And we're really thankful for you guys to join us for another day, for another broadcast, sharing some insight today with you. So we know that in this changing world of work, the way that we do things and the processes we follow are being forced to adapt to this new way of working. And when one looks at organizations and the way that they manage their talent pool specifically, there's one key process that's also being forced to adapt, and that is the candidate interview. So whether you're sitting on the side of the table asking the questions, or whether you're on the receiving end or sitting on the opposite side of the table being interviewed, in an independent consulting world, the way that you prepare and conduct that interview requires new insight and a new approach, and most of all, new practice. So today's broadcast is all about that, aiming to equip you, whoever you are, whichever side of the boardroom table you're sitting on, with techniques and tools to help you soar through an interview with or as an independent consultant. So I'm thrilled today to be joined by two professionals who understand the interview world very well. That's Talmix's head of talent, Oliver Luscombe, and independent consultant Yogesh Gupta. Welcome, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today on the panel.
Thank you.
Great having you here. So in 30 seconds, I'm not going to introduce you. You can do it so much better. Yogesh, tell us a little bit more about you and introduce yourself to the audience today.
Sure. My name is Yogesh Gupta. I'm a strategy and process transformation consultant with primary focus on physical asset management, operational excellence, change management, and also leading up to the business strategy, target operating models, and other exercises that go along with it. I've had very varied background, industry sectors as well, both primary and secondary energy sectors, but also utilities. So I worked in a number of sectors, number of roles, and hence decided to jump in with the independent roles, and have been doing that for nearly a year now. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, it's good to have you here, and have almost happy birthday for your independent world. Thanks, Yogesh. Oliver, tell us a little bit more about you and introduce yourself and your background to us. Wonder if Oliver can see us. I see that he has frozen for a second. Oh, there he is. He's back. Oliver, can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry. It just froze, yeah.
That's okay. Go ahead and take a few seconds to introduce yourself to us.
Okay, thank you. My name's Oliver Luscombe. I've been in talent and recruiting since I graduated 15 years ago. I've worked at some large organizations like PwC and EY. I've also worked in headhunting organizations and outsourced providers, and more recently a high-tech software organization. So my job really, as far as I see it, is to help businesses find great and identify great talent and nurture them and help them be the best they can be. And on the candidate side, my job is to help make a company more transparent and help them identify whether it's the right choice for them in their future.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much, chaps, and welcome again. As I said, thank you for your time. I know you're both very busy. So I want to just jump right into it. So Oliver, I'd like to start with you. As you mentioned, you've recruited for a number of high-profile organizations in your career. Tell us a little bit more about that. And in particular, what I'd like to know is the similarities in the way that clients look for talent, whether permanent or on an interim basis.
Okay, well, first of all, a candidate has to demonstrate initial credibility, and that starts with their CV. So it needs to be easy to read, it needs to be informative, specific, and highlighting of personal impact, achievements, and milestones. Where possible, what difference did they make to the bottom line? Further to that, a considered CV goes a long way. You immediately stand out as professional and someone who's very serious about your application. It's a free chance to speak the language of the employer, connect your suitability, and draw attention to the key aspects of your background. Clients also look for connections and similarities when it comes to hiring. The more you have, the less a risk you are, essentially. Who do you both know? What feedback or positive evidence can you share with them? What comparable environments have you worked in? And what systems have you used? What industry nous do you have? Subjects that you've studied. coincidentally, if you have lots of non-relevant skills and experience highlighted on your CV, it can also do some harm as much as the good stuff. So that's why tailoring your CV and cover letter before applying is a great effect in terms of promoting your candidacy.
Awesome. And Yogesh, from your point of view, I mean, you have extensive experience in this field as well, and specifically on being on the consultant side of the interview. In your experience, what sticks out to you as being the main thing that clients look for in independent consultants?
For independent consultants, obviously it depends on the project. But what I tend to say is there are three different types of consultants. The ones that are delivery focused, so one that are good at driving projects, delivering projects. There are one that are good at, their expertise, so there are subject matter experts. And then the third type, which I think are the most important ones, are the combination of both. So the subject matter experts and the ones that can deliver the projects as well. What I've experienced, that 7 out of 10 clients that I speak with would go for people who have got the qualities of both. So the people who have got the knowledge about what needs to be done, but also know how that needs to be done, because they have done it not only that in that client-specific environment, but also in different sectors, different geographies, with different cultures. So it's quite important that you demonstrate that exposure that you have had is quite relevant to the project that you're pitching for. So that's quite important for independence.
Okay, brilliant. And Oliver, when you look now a little bit more holistically at the way that organizations have hired talent traditionally, and certainly, I mean, the way that you have hired talent yourself in the past, how have perceptions changed in terms of hiring independent talent as opposed to permanent placements?
Yes, well, quite a lot, to be frank. With the increase of technology and social tools, access to talent is fast and informative. In addition, since the financial crash, which we've never really recovered from in 2008, 2009, business leaders are having to be far more conservative in relation to headcount costs and are being held far more accountable for demonstrating performance, return on investment, and increased efficiency from their, in most cases, reduced teams. Being average is not enough anymore. This increased understanding of performance and impact has kind of driven up the value of unique skills and experience, and hence the freelancer and contract market. So clients can segment resource needs, which would then gain from more high caliber consultants as opposed to the sort of longer term permanent employees, and that saves employee costs and reduces the headcount. That flexibility also allows for a kind of swift change of direction and agility to meet their own client demands.
Okay, so when we look at the interview as an assessment tool for hiring new talent, for example, are you seeing any trends in new tools being used to assess relevancy of talent, like things like case studies, behavioral assessments, things like that? What are you seeing?
So the value of job-related competency-based interviews is well established and continues to be widely used when assessing the relevancy of talent. Used well, it provides far greater insight to the candidate's previous experiences and how they approached/added value to those situations. A key thing in terms of current trends which comes to mind is the on-demand video interviewing, which is reflective, I guess, of the kind of fast pace at which most of today's professionals live their lives. It's a quick and an effective tool to evaluate candidates, and it kind of gives them 10 minutes to complete in their own time. And from a business perspective, it just saves on inviting people into the office who within a short space of time have felt not to be appropriate. A couple of other trends I see progressing is the increased use of assessment tools such as psychometrics, aptitude tests, reasoning tests, and case study/simulation interviews, which are designed to better understand the candidate's qualities against the defined role relevant skill set. Moving forward, perhaps we will see these more replacing the kind of dinosaur requirements of academics, for example, which may mean that people are currently missing out on top talent with unusual or unique career paths.
And now, Yogesh, if we look at you as someone who's been on the receiving end of those interviews, what have you experienced, if anything, outside of the traditional interview?
I think Oliver raised quite important point here. The psychometric test or behavior assessments. They're quite important, especially when you're recruiting somebody with less of an experience. So it's really, really important tools, and hence many are still using them. For the last 6-8 years, what I've been seeing is a client will ask me picking up a random topic and making a presentation, good 5-6 slides out of it, presenting myself and basically selling that concept. Doesn't matter how random that topic is. So a great example is once I was given a character of Donald Duck. I had to make a presentation about it, selling that concept, right? So it's funny, but it just shows, sometimes people want to see your creativity as well, right? So yeah, it depends at which level you are, right? So at entry level, it's definitely useful, with this behavior tests. But as you grow into your career, there will be some other methods that the clients are using, and you will have to just respond with.
I suppose it's testing your ability to think on your feet, and
exactly.
That's interesting. I'm not sure I'd be as good as Donald Duck about Donald Duck. Yogesh, in just over a month, as I mentioned, you'll obviously be celebrating your first anniversary of independence, and already you've been keeping busy with a great bunch of projects. So when you look back over your career, both as a full-time employee as well as now as an independent consultant, what are the differences that you've experienced in the way that clients interview you for an employee versus a consultant to step in for a short-term project?
Right. So if I were to clock back and think as I'm being interviewed as an employee, I think the key thing there that employer is looking for is a cultural fit. Would I be able to fit in that culture or not, or that organizational culture or not? If I look at how I'm interviewed now, is how quickly I can implement the results that they're looking for. So there is a slight change in mentality how they're looking for, because with an employee mentality that they will look for somebody who is qualified, obviously, have had some experience, not necessarily everything that they're looking for, but some experience. But most importantly, this person is the right material that will fit into that culture. I think that's the key difference that I've seen whilst I've been interviewed lately. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Oliver, if we shift to you for a sec, we know that obviously the world is full of competition. I mean, at Talmix alone, we have over 25,000 incredible consultants with so many talents and expertise. So when it comes to that dream project, what is your suggestion to helping consultants stand out from the crowd? What are some of the things they need to think about?
Well, talent leaders need numbers to back up the words. So facts, figures, and evidence which are valid, relevant, and accurate can be used to directly qualify you for that particular need. Just doing a previous job role should never really be considered enough. It's what personal impact you have made to costs, revenue generation, efficiency, or what major obstacles perhaps you have faced, and how the relevant stakeholders you were serving benefited from those expectations, above expectations. Successful opportunities, I guess, also depends on the development of your network and the timing of that. So maintaining relationships has never really been easier, and people certainly prefer those they either know or people that they know. So volunteer people who can vouch for you. Find out who you're seeing in advance. Find out who you both know in common, and ask those mutual connections to vouch for you. Moving forward, of course, the sort of harnessing of social biodata to automatically align talent and talent leaders will play a bigger part in hiring. People will be looking at the common interests that you have: groups, online networks, likes, shares, following. For independent consultants, especially, being active on social media is going to be an essential, even ever more so essential activity, and critical to your future opportunities. Finally, being willing to provide additional information, which perhaps you may not be directly asked for, is also a good piece of advice. So things like conference presentations that you have delivered, unique environments which you've experienced, recent courses you've attended, personal interests that might align. Talent leaders try to ask all the right questions, but there's no perfect interview, and they might also miss something that's relevant. So indeed, you also need to think about what misconceptions or assumptions they could make in advance, and deal with that up front.
I suppose, I mean, that's just as an aside, it's the power of the network, again, extending and speaking for you. You know, it's just, I think from so many consultants that I speak to, the mission of the network and building your network is such a fundamental core. And it comes up again now in the interview. So do you have any personal favorite interviews, Oliver, over your career where certain candidates have stood out to you?
Yeah, well, so, I mean, I've probably interviewed thousands of people over the last 15 years. So I guess of those, there's a particular type of interview which comes about ever so often, which I absolutely love. And that's the candidate that raises their game, the firmer and tougher the interview gets. As an interviewer, I want to be impressed. I want that candidate to stand out and to do well. But for that to happen, sometimes I need to push them, to challenge them, and to question them. I see the role of an interviewer as providing a platform for candidates to perform and share their best against the specific job role that you are speaking about. So I guess those who then react, they seize the moment and they demonstrate why they're unique. That to me is, you know, everybody wins in that scenario.
And Yogesh, from your point of view, what are some of the ways that you have seen, or yourself maybe, you know, where consultants have set themselves apart from their peers, especially when it comes to a face-to-face shortlisting interview for a project, for example?
Yeah, I think Oliver has covered a lot of points already on this questions. If you look at numbers, you said 25,000 consultants in Talmix, in UK over 2 million. I think the most important thing is now you're competing against that talent pool, right? So you need to be able to demonstrate your value drivers. What's your value proposition? You need to consider in that terms why you are sitting in front of that interviewer at that very same moment, right? So you need to think in that term, why you and why you're better than everybody else, right? So because good is not enough now, right? Because a lot of people are going independent. So you need to demonstrate that you are best out of that talent pool that is out there. And obviously you need to also tell them that you have seen the work, you know the problem, you know also the challenges that you know will come across, you know, whilst you will be helping out a client in their journey, and how you can leverage that experience that you have. May not necessarily be in the same sector, but how you would be able to leverage that. Because I've come across that. I'm an oil and gas consultant, so that's where I started. How I ended up in utility, that's clearly, you know, it's an example that because you can leverage similarities from another sector to similar problems that they see in particular industry sector. So I think you should be able to demonstrate that, like, you know, there is a lot more that you can offer than they're looking for, right? So you understand the client challenge or problem, you know the challenge that you will come across, and you need to be able to demonstrate your value drivers, right? So this is the key.
Yeah. Absolutely. I was just going to say the one, I'm waiting on you to say it, because in a previous conversation you spoke about demonstrating value, which did stick out for me, you know, being able to demonstrate that value to the customer that you, or the potential, you know, client that's looking to hire you. And so tell me a little bit more about your own experience. What have you done anything in the past that has enabled you to stand out from your peers?
For me, the clear thing is that, as I said, that you got to show them that yes, you know what they're talking about because you've done it, or you have come across similar challenges in the past. But another thing that you need to demonstrate that you are their partner in their journey. It's not that I'm a consultant that's going to come in and going to do some really nice mathematical modelings or other bits and bobs and use some nice fancy business tools, and then I'll hand you over a nice fancy solution. No, when you demonstrate that you're their partner in all capacity, not only becoming a solution architect for them, but also helping them see through the journey. As I said, that because when you transfer that project from that theoretical side to a practical side, you will see a lot of challenges are appearing, and you need to be able to demonstrate that, you know, you are going to be there to solve those challenges or manage those challenges, mitigate the risks, and are going to deliver the results that clients are after.
Absolutely. So Oliver, if we take a slight look at the digital recruitment world versus the more traditional one, what advice would you give to someone who is really at the mercy of a digital impression rather than a physical one, especially when we look at a platform like Talmix?
Yeah, so interesting question. I guess the first thing to say is many futurologists are predicting that by 2020, as many as 30% of the workforce in the UK especially will be freelance. In addition, 77%, I mean, if we look back over the last 10 years of employment has been created in the UK from people turning to self-employment. So the gig economy is definitely on the up, and indeed the digital world is becoming particularly prevalent. So having said all of that, people still buy off people, and it will always continue that way. So if you allow yourself to become a digital impression only, that could be very limiting. So I would advise people to think cleverly around who and where they network with, what they contribute to that, and how they think it will help them achieve their longer term objectives. It's also probably worth mentioning here the upcoming General Data Protection Regulation law amendment, which will come in next year, which is going to bring in some important sort of changes in requirements for people, for consultants who particularly focus on short-term interim assignments. This will increase legal control and ownerships of your data and how that's managed. For organizations, they will need to consider it very carefully and make sure they're compliant by the time it comes around in May of next year. So issues as part of that are attracting particular focus include obtaining consent and increased administrative requirements, including the need to provide a full audit trail, data exports, and the new obligations around data processors.
Perfect. Yes, thanks for mentioning that as well. And for our viewers, just intersect, we will be running a broadcast a little bit later in the year all about that, enabling you to equip yourself and make sure that you're compliant and make sure that you're fully up to speed on what that law amendment will be. So Yogesh, anything that you wanted to add to that before we move on to the next question?
No, I think yes, it's important to be visible on social platforms like LinkedIn, Twitter. Just make use of whatever you can, because like the way the SEOs work, even in LinkedIn, why your name will appear on top of the list will only because you far more active than the rest, right? So you got to put some energy into that as well, and thoughts into be thought leader, write about the content that you think or you are passionate about, and also participate in the conversation where you see a topic that's interesting to you and maybe useful to your connections as well. So always think in those terms. It's useful. It's always useful.
And so, Yogesh, if you had to give your top suggestion on things that candidates or independent consultants should think about when it comes to preparing for an interview, what would they be?
I think the first and foremost is becoming, representing yourself as who you are, right? Don't put a mask on your face and go in front of a client. Show who you are and represent yourself the way you are as well. So that's the most important thing. So that honesty. The second thing about that value drivers that I mentioned earlier on, that why you, what's your value proposition? Be ready to demonstrate that, because there are a lot of people out there who are in independent capacity are competing against you for the same roles, right? So you should be able to demonstrate that what are your value drivers. A third important topic is that you should also be able to challenge the client's thinking. Because if we're talking about independent roles, right? So a key difference between how an employee will take on an assignment and how independent takes on an assignment is employee will follow instructions given to them. And as an independent consultant, it's your role to guide customer to get to a right solution that they're looking for the particular problem. So you should be able to challenge the customers, their own thinking, why they're looking at a solution in a certain specific way that they're looking for. And you will see, at least I've seen it, that they do tend to change their rationale or the way that they thought about delivering a project, because they've seen something different, something better that you shared with them, or some of the scope. So they tend to change the scope in that sense. That's what I'm talking about. But the end result of this, you will see that you now started becoming their trusted advisor, right? So that partnership that I'm talking about. So you started going into that zone. And then my experience, 9 out of 10 times, you will win that project. Yeah, so that's quite important.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And Oliver, if we look at it from the client side who is looking to recruit or to hire an independent consultant, how would you suggest that a client prepares for an interim or an independent consultant interview?
Yeah, so preparation again is fundamental. It's key. So you first need to spend invest a decent amount of time in getting a deep understanding of the need that you have. So what would great look like as an outcome from the project, for example? That might benefit from others' opinions, such as cross-departmental perspectives, former job occupants, contracts or contacts in the market who have been through similar projects already. Perhaps even look at who else in marketplace is hiring such skills and how they're approaching it. Once that's complete, an accurate brief can then be written, and empowering, thus, potentially interested consultants to select or deselect themselves appropriately, and saving both you and them time and pain later, and essentially lead to a more aligned expectations on both sides. Once you fully, truly define that role, you can then identify the key tasks and thus the hiring process assessments, which are then, attributed against those key tasks and skills needed. There is obviously then an opportunity to think about who. So who would be most likely to bring those skills, and who would be most likely to make that big impact? So we can think about what companies or industry sectors have perhaps already faced similar problems, profiles who would specifically be relevant, and if you're lucky, additional benefits that could be achieved through the identification of a particular skill set or background which is new or perhaps different to the norm in your business. In addition, if you're confident and clear with your brief, you can then ask the candidate direct questions like, what's the closest you've been to this kind of challenge?
That's awesome. It makes it a lot more personal. And as Yogesh was saying earlier, it makes it more about their value and their skill for a particular project, as opposed to them fitting a set of criteria. Chaps, just in the last 3 minutes, final thoughts. Yogesh, final thoughts on this from an independent consultant point of view.
I think what's important to highlight that as an independent consultant, you are selling knowledge as your product. So be mindful with what knowledge that you're selling, know your limits, and if you want to branch out from one industry sector to another, understand those limitations with the product that you're selling, i.e. knowledge. What more would you need to add into that, and what have you. So it's important to understand your limits. So the best thing to do is draw up a SWOT for yourself, right? I did that and it was very useful. That's where I understood where I'm lacking from the point of view that where I want to branch out from oil and gas to another industry sector. So it's quite important to draw out that SWOT. And always remember, when you draw your SWOT, you will see what is your value driver, right? What are your key unique selling points, right? So I'm talking from a product rollout perspective, but you are rolling out yourself as product as well, with the aim that you're going to sell knowledge to end users, right? So you need to look at that as a business proposition and how you're going to be valuable to the client.
That makes beautiful sense, because you are selling a brand as yourself, aren't you? You're promoting a brand, which incidentally is going to be another broadcast coming up soon. So keep your eyes on this. That's a whole different topic. Oliver, final thoughts from you before I close for the afternoon.
Yeah, so a couple of final thoughts. From my experience, too many people sell on what they have done without making the link to why they have done it and how that experience might benefit the person sitting in front of them. So that's first thought. Read the online profiles in advance, the company sites, consider what news articles are relevant. Identify maybe the language that's used, the repetitions, the recent online activity in the market which is relevant and that's going on for that person's business. For me, second point, personal brand is more prevalent than ever, meaning that at the very worst, you want to leave any interview with the interviewer being comfortable to refer you or future business to you. Keep what you say relevant to them, mirror their body language, contribute something different, and be transparent. Trust and reputation wins business and is the cornerstone of all productive relationships. And then the final sort of two things I would say is preparation and making wise time investments is key. And the final one I'll say is be excited or don't proceed.
True. Good words to end on. Chaps, thank you so much for your time today and for your insights. Certainly very helpful from both of those perspectives. So thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you.
Both of you.
Thank you.
And for our viewers, thank you very much for joining us today. We've hit the nail on the head. It's 5 o'clock here in the UK today. But just as I mentioned, May, we're going to be running a very exciting broadcast all about your personal brand. So do come back and keep your eye on our social media and on your email inboxes and newsletters for that. And we've also got an exciting set of broadcasts soon after that. So do come back recurringly and subscribe to our channel if necessary. Thank you everybody for joining us again. Have a wonderful afternoon, and yeah, we look forward to speaking to you guys again soon. So take care.
Pleasure.